Sirius__1911. Hi.
Hello, Sirius. How's it going? Startled me a little bit. Welcome to the channel. What's happening? I'll turn that text-to-speech off in a second. I see. I'm doing okay, thanks. Just relaxing. Taking it easy, slowing down, you know, resting. Yeah, it is relaxing. I try to do it as often as I can to help settle the concerns of the world. My world. I find it very rewarding. It took me a long time to learn how to relax deeply. What brings you to the channel? Anything specific, or are you just wandering? You're wandering through Twitch. Just wandering. Cool. I like your profile picture, but I can't tell who it is. Is that you? No, I'm not a preacher. It reminds me of, well, it reminds me of a couple of people. Your profile picture I'm talking about. One is Mads Mikkelsen, and another one I think is a character from a video game, but I can't be sure. Either Red Dead Redemption or what's that other game called? The Last of Us. What makes you think I'm a preacher? Is it the it is Joel Miller. Aha, yes, the main character. Is it the clothing that makes you think I'm a preacher? Yeah, that's who I thought. I first thought Mads Mikkelsen, and then Joel from The Last of Us, the main dude. Ah, I see. Well, yeah, I can see the connection. Preaching is an interesting thing, you know. Obviously, the person has connected with something within themselves, or, I mean, I know a lot of people preach the Gospels or some sort of book, and I know it's for some people. Some people like to hear that. It's almost like having ideas and words thrown at you, isn't it? Preaching. But I don't preach with the intention of telling people what to do. But I guess you could say it's closely connected. The part about, you know, having connected with something, having found something that I like to share, and I guess that's the similarity. And it's not that I like to share it, even though I do, but that's not why I do it. It seems to be very beneficial for people so far, talking to people about certain things so far, as in all cases, especially recently. So when I say that, over the last probably 5 years of my life, everybody I talk to, they seem to find benefit from the conversation. So it's almost like I'm being asked to do it. Yeah, very true. Yeah, that's I'd say that's a real observation. It really depends on the, you know, the capacity or the level of awareness or insight of the person or the preacher and those being preached to. Some people, it really helps them, doesn't it, listening to a preacher? But from my observation, I think a lot of preachers do their thinking for the audience, and it's almost like the audience is expected to follow the preacher, to hear their word, take it as truth. And obviously there's going to be exceptions. Some preachers will inspire inquiry and questioning, I think, in their audience. But it's just very easy for people to kind of fall into following someone, you know, instead of seeking themselves, trying to penetrate the truth of the situation for themselves. But of course, you know, if I took a person off of the streets and that person, their life was kind of falling apart and they didn't know what to do about it and they were in deep misery, and if you leave them alone in their own misery, it's just going to get worse or stay the same. It's not going to change. And then if you compared that to that person following a preacher who was going to tell them what to do, if that preacher has a good message, I think I would probably encourage that person to go to the preacher. If they're not prepared to really do the work themselves and delve into it themselves, I think I would encourage that person to go towards the preacher for the benefit of their life. So, you know, it does obviously resonate with some people. Ah, yes, I see. I suppose you have to get to the root of the intention behind it and the reality behind it, because it's possible to preach anything, isn't it, ultimately? So, to get to the core of what is the fundamental message, if you want to call it that. Also, to go out and to assume that you know something that people want or people need to hear is, well, I'd say at the very least you'd have to be questionable about, you'd have to question that assumption. What makes you think people need to hear what you have to say? Are people asking you to speak? Are people inquiring into you and your message? At which point, I wouldn't use the definition of preaching at that point. It would be more answering questions, potentially guiding people or responding to people. Whereas I know there's an element of preaching whereby people just blatantly start shouting and verbalizing their opinions and views, or their, as you said, whatever it is they've found, they just kind of start preaching it to the world. So I think you have to assume that people want to hear your message, which I definitely don't do. I know, in fact, a lot of people don't resonate very well with me and the types of things that I discuss. Sure, I suppose if you can watch them long enough, if you can see them clearly, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, is there? Put a magnifying glass on them, so to speak, watch them intensely, and yeah, gain insight into their character, I suppose, or their actions, their message, and see how it resonates with you. Do you follow anything serious? And what would you say you must follow? Do you have any specific examples of that? What must you follow? I see, the rules of society. And do you follow those rules because you feel deep down that you should? Or do you follow, and when I say you should, as if that's the right thing to do? Or do you follow it because you're told you have to, and because you don't want to get in trouble? As in, like, we're talking about kind of right and wrong, aren't we? Do you follow the rules because you believe they are right and righteous? The law, so to speak, if that's kind of what you're talking about there, like you can't drive without a license, there are rules. Or do you follow them because you don't want to get in trouble? Fair enough. Yeah, I guess getting back to no, but I guess getting back to like the origin of the conversation along the lines of preaching and people following a preacher. Anything that I've come into contact with that I wanted to follow along with for a while, as in perhaps it was a teaching, perhaps it was a teacher, perhaps it was I don't know, some particular style of martial arts, for example. I wanted to follow along with that for a while and kind of test it and gain an insight into it. I guess there's the element of blind following, isn't there? There's blind faith, and then there's, even in this example, as a person, if I say I follow the law, why? Why do I do that? Have I looked deeply into it? Is it because I'm afraid of getting in trouble? Do I believe in the law? Do I believe in the preacher? Have I looked so deeply enough into the problem that I find it to be unavoidable and essential to go along with that particular thing? And do I find it to be true? Getting back, sort of pointing towards like preachers. Preachers tend to preach a message, don't they? And I think, speaking personally, I would have to know, if I was going to follow anyone, I would have to know whether or not what they were talking about is true. And obviously the only way to find that out is to find out for yourself, at which point you don't need to follow anyone because you find out for yourself, It's a weird kind of dynamic. If you're going to follow a preacher, I think the very definition of that is that you don't know the truth for yourself. I think that's an interesting idea, Sirius, because I have to ask the question, and we'll make this personal, alright, if you don't mind. I would ask you, if tomorrow all of the rules of society were gone, would you descend into chaos? Would you resort to anarchy and chaos in your life? You don't have to answer that question, okay, but I know I wouldn't. If the rules of society, I'm not speaking for a lot of people, obviously a lot of people and a lot of society would descend into chaos. But does that mean that it's not possible to live without chaos? If there are no rules, no laws, no government, can people still not be good? And okay, the obvious answer is a lot of people wouldn't be. They would take advantage because there's no more punishments. Even though I think different kinds of punishments would probably manifest. People who engage in such destructive and chaotic behavior tend to kill each other, But I'm just saying, if you wake up in the day and you're, let's just say, a righteous person, okay, you don't steal from people, you don't attack people, you don't hurt people, you don't destroy things, you tend to cultivate goodness and happiness and kindness, and you try not to annoy people, etc., etc. You'd probably get on quite well. I mean, if you've got a car and you need to drive it, you're still going to drive carefully on the road. You're going to look both ways at oncoming traffic. So the rules don't necessarily dictate a good society. And think about it, there are laws and there are rules in society, but people still break them and they still act chaotic. So the rules and the laws are kind of a byproduct. Even though those things are in place, we still descend into chaos in various places in the world. So I think I'd have to say that it would be more important for the person, the individual, to kind of rule themselves, maybe through various kinds of forms of discipline, or just, and I'll say it like this and probably end it, you can say something else if you want to, but I think when you really deeply connect with yourself, you become a good person. Or you realize that there is goodness deep inside you. There is also the capacity for evil, and there is also the capacity for destruction, and so you need to be careful. And if you can really honestly see that and learn to walk carefully in life, you're not going to hurt anyone. That would be the last thing you would ever do. In fact, very often you would connect with people quite deeply and want to help them and want to support them, because you've connected with a very deep part of yourself, At which point the normal kind of rules of society I think you could say you've transcended the need for them, because you're not an idiot, and you are careful enough to govern yourself with true wisdom. But that's just speaking personally, I can't speak for most people, and I think you're right there. A lot of people would descend into chaos as soon as they realized the rules had been dissolved. They would try to take advantage of the situation, which is a shame, I suppose. Is government necessary? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Which I suppose gets us back to that original question of the preacher. Maybe people need that, Survival. The mindset of survival, yeah. Self-preservation. Isn't that interesting? Lots of questions come up from that, lots of potential theoretical scenarios, If you were put in a room, for example, you and a child, your own child, I don't know if you have children, and the people who put you in the room let you and the child know that only one of you is going to eat. And that you have to choose. One of you is going to eat, the other person isn't. What would you do? Now, you don't have to think about this stuff. But it's an interesting question, isn't it? This desire for self-preservation. Does it have a limit? Is it limited? Meaning, okay, it applies under most circumstances, but not all. Is it possible to overcome the need, the so-called need of the body to preserve itself? Can you overcome that? Can that be overcome? I can tell you now, any parent in that situation would not eat. If it was their own child, or even if it was another child. Now the question, I suppose, arises, maybe once that person is really starving, the adult, once they're really starving, would their mind change? And obviously these are unknowable answers. But people go to war for their country, don't they? People kill. Okay, I suppose that doesn't really apply. Or kind of it does. People put themselves in the firing line to protect their brothers, their sisters, their friends, their family. People run out into streets to save the child that's on the road when the car is coming. And so, I guess it does apply, this law of self-preservation, this rule of self-preservation. It applies in most circumstances. Yeah, I think that's it's a fair answer, isn't it? So I wonder if humanity had enough wisdom and enough enlightenment and enough wisdom, really, is what it boils down to. Could we remove the rules of society, the laws? Would people wake up tomorrow and descend into chaos, or would they learn to live in harmony with each other? Because enlightenment, right, wisdom has a lot of space. It gives things a lot of space, right? I know from my own contact with, let's just say, people who kind of descend into chaos quite quickly. They tend to be very reactive. Things are happening quickly and they're reacting very quickly. They get quite emotional and fearful in the moment. But if you've ever met anyone who's really wise, as things are happening, problems are arising, they tend to step back a lot and really look at the situation. Wisdom gives things a lot of space. So I think if people were evolved enough, most laws, in fact law wouldn't even be necessary. If people were fully evolved, really evolved, to the point where they knew of the impact they would have on each other and of the damage they would cause each other and the pain. Imagine if you had to experience all of the pain that if you cause a person pain in life, if you knew that all of the pain that you've caused, you are going to have to experience at some point, because that's a law of karma, all right? Imagine if you knew that. You may or may not believe in karma, and it's just a bit irrelevant to the point I'm trying to get at here. Let's say it's a fundamental principle of reality that all energy is cyclic, okay? So all of the energy that you put out, you're investing into this cycle of energy and the transformation of energy, which means it has to come back to you at some point. Now, if you knew that to be totally, absolutely true, not because you'd been told it and you believed it, but because you could see it happening in your life, would you be very careful when you wake up tomorrow about how you interacted with the world and the way that you influenced the people around you and the things that you did to them or didn't do or did to yourself, etc., etc.? If a human being knew that, because they could see it unfolding, if you could see karma unfolding in your life, if you could see this process of energy and the transformation of energy, what would you do? Would you wake up and govern yourself in a very careful way and want to only promote goodness and connection and happiness and friendship? Jesus' message, the whole love deal, yeah? More people would, I believe. And yeah, it's an assumption, but I think if a lot of people who might descend into chaos, if they knew this, if they really truly knew it because they could see it, most of the stuff they are doing, or the chaos elements would stop. Does it really feel like living in fear? I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to see you in pain. I want to see you happy, and I want me and you together. I want us to cultivate a better life and a more happy life for everyone. Does that sound like living in fear? I can see why you say that, by the way. But when you really look at it, is it? Or is it the opposite of that? I want to live in love with you and share this love, actually. For your benefit and for mine, I would rather see you happy than miserable. And of course, I include myself in my love too. I would rather see myself happy than miserable. Just a thought. I guess we're talking about evolution of consciousness, right? So what we determine people to be now is not what they would be in an evolved situation. The reality of that unfolds. Sorry, you can see the reality of that unfolding when you really tap deeply into wisdom, your own wisdom. All of a sudden, you realize you've been carrying a lot of illusions and wrong beliefs in your head with you, you know? As you were growing up in life, you were conditioned to believe certain things and to think those things were real or important. But as your consciousness evolves and you become wiser because you really start to look at what's going on, a lot of those illusions die. You now no longer can think the same way that you used to because you killed that illusion. It dissolved, you saw through it. So that's the evolution of consciousness as it becomes more and more in tune with reality. It just lets go of a lot of the cause for conflict and war. So if society could evolve in that direction, and by society that just means people, you know. If people could evolve in that direction, we would see less people fuck up, so to speak. That's not saying it wouldn't still happen, but then obviously, yeah, you approach those fuck ups with awareness, insight, understanding, compassion, forgiveness. I guess the way you've put it there, people living happily, full of forgiveness. Yes, and aware of the cause of human misery. You know, misery has a cause. You know, it does. Misery has a cause. There is something that causes humans to become unhappy and miserable and fearful. So in the opposite realm, there's a cause to happiness, love, and there's a cause to freedom and beauty and all of these things. So if people are living towards that greater happiness collectively, then they have to live with an awareness of what causes misery and then try to learn to live without that collectively. It's a nice line of thinking, isn't it? Without sadness, happiness won't matter. Hello, Michaela. How are you? Welcome back. But what if, Sirius, there's a neutral space? What if there's a, you know how we're talking about extremes, so descending into unhappiness, and then if we descend into unhappiness, there is, then we ascend into happiness? What if there's a space of consciousness beyond sadness and happiness? Or beyond the kind of happiness that is the result of sadness? How are you, Michaela? There's no grey areas. How certain are you that that's true? Hello, Jessie. Oh, I see. Anushka. What's going on? I used to live at a house quite recently and there was a big dog called Anushka. She's a beautiful dog. Welcome to the stream. So you're doing okay, Jessie? I see. Lots of people. Welcome, Sirius. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for the follow. So, you've been processing a little bit, have you, Jessie? What an interesting talk that was, wasn't it? It's nice to have those conversations with people. Jessie and the horses. I think everyone's from Jim's channel, aren't they? Most people have come from Jim. Yeah, well, that's an important thing to do, isn't it? We were just talking a little bit about wisdom and how wisdom gives things a lot of space. We were talking a little bit about the rules of society and how I asked the question, people think if there were no rules in society, then everything would descend into chaos. People tend to think that, and it's a pretty obvious reality, Okay, there would be chaos in a lot of places, but I asked the question, and it's a personal question. It's the sort of thing you have to answer for yourself. If the rules of society and the laws of society disappeared tomorrow, would you descend into chaos? You personally, could it be possible for you to wake up tomorrow and totally self-regulate and self-govern? Or would you descend into chaos just because there are no rules? And the reason we're asking that question is because is it within a person's capacity to be good without law? Do we need to be told and controlled? Or can we just operate within ourselves, within goodness? Are we not capable of being kind to each other and friendly and supportive and helpful? Are we not, each of us as individuals, capable of doing that? And if we're not, I guess we could ask why not? And if we are, the origin of this conversation, by the way, was about preaching and whether or not, some people like to follow. Is it possible to go beyond that though? Do we need to follow rules? These are just questions. I'm just sort of filling you guys in on the kind of conversation we had. If someone is trying to hurt me, I will retaliate. We have this very difficult problem with these types of questions, don't we? If there's 10 of us all living in a property, on a house together, and we're all awakening and enlightening ourselves, finding peace, and cultivating harmony, but then somebody comes in who's murderous. They infect the whole environment. What's to be done about it? Do you love them? Can you love them? Where do you draw the line? These are quite difficult things to get your head around. Quite difficult ideas. So then, does everybody have to cultivate at the same time? Very true. Very true. Serious. Very true. Which kind of points out the fact that the law isn't the be-all and end-all of the human spirit. Just because there are laws doesn't mean, well, it's just not. The law is no explanation of human reality or human government. Just because there is a law does not make it so. Okay, the law obviously helps govern people maybe more efficiently, but is there another way? Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Jesse. Nature. We talk about the laws of nature, don't we? The way of nature. But obviously that's not... Nobody dictates that. Nobody dictates the laws of nature. It is self-governed. So I wonder if humanity came into contact deeply with nature, the inner nature, would it be self-governing, self-regulating? Does that need to be imposed? This all stems from the origin of the conversation around preaching and how a preacher tends to, not always, and it depends on the person, but the very idea of preaching as if to impose my idea, to tell everyone, come listen to me. I'm an authority in this, and I will tell you what is true because you can't see for yourself, or something like that, And law does something similar, doesn't it? That's an interesting perspective, Anushka. What makes you say that? We're talking essentially about varying degrees of the evolution of consciousness. That's what we're considering here. You better go get some more smoke, Sirius, or maybe it's a good thing that you're gonna run out. There are dimensions of shared consciousness, right? Shared evolved consciousness, highly evolved, in which it's impossible for a certain, let's just call it lower level of development to penetrate. And so if we're beginning to cooperate in this process of evolution and we're evolving together consciously and we know we're doing it, the question arises, what do we do with those who aren't evolving with us, or they're evolving in a different direction? What do we do with them, or what do we do about them? Do we do anything about them at all? Do we just leave them to it? You think that care for others is imposed and not natural? What makes it imposed? Do I not make a choice right now how to govern my language and how to govern my action and how to govern my communication with you? Am I not choosing to be very conscious about this interaction? And would I not choose to want to share and support and connect and love, essentially? Why is that imposed? Conditioning, Jesse. Have you heard the quote of the Dalai Lama? You probably have, where he says, if we taught the next generation or this generation of children to meditate, we would eradicate a war, conflict, from the human consciousness within one generation. We would eradicate that because we're interrupting the conditioning. So, and we see this often in ourselves when we're alone and we like to meditate. So we spend a lot of time quiet and calm. And then we pick up the phone and talk to a person. And already the effect of that can be felt immediately, whether that person is maybe dwelling in misery or they could be really excited. It's like we infect each other, And so if a person enters into nature and finds this bliss and peace and serenity, but then returns to humanity and it's an experience of chaos. I mean, my immediate thought was that's not appropriate, would I not rather have an interaction with somebody and cultivate an environment as a human being whereby when that person came to me, they felt more peaceful and more connected and more serene and more happy, or maybe just as happy as if they were going to be alone in nature. Clearly we've gone astray somewhere collectively. We've misunderstood something, or we've gone down the wrong path, you know? Conscious governance, right? To govern myself consciously. You to govern yourself consciously as best you can. And of course, my consciousness opens up to include you and want to support you and want to surround you with love and support, you know. And so I'm patient. My consciousness contains a great deal of patience while we work on this together. And if you can maintain openness in your cultivation and a genuine respect and the wisdom of saying, okay, in this environment that we are cultivating together, that person tends to have a great deal of insight, wisdom, experience. Perhaps they should be kind of not dictating, but maybe leading in a certain capacity. Until, if I recognize this person has great wisdom, I can see it, I can hear it when they talk, I can feel it in their presence. And so I want to cultivate wisdom. I want to be like that. And so I should pay attention to that person and learn to grow and become wiser. It just seems like the logical thing to do. Whereas if I think I've got it all figured out and I'm closed off to being connected, well, I'm just cultivating myself. I'm not cultivating the connection, you know? So it's a case of self-cultivation while maintaining this awareness that you are absolutely not alone in this. We are here now sharing this conversation. What you say right now is influencing this one, me, right? The way that you act, the words that you speak, the words that I speak. We're sharing this together. If we can live with that consciousness, damn right each of us will be very careful. Of course we will. I don't want to hurt you. And I don't want you to hurt me, please. And so, that consciousness, where do you see it? Do you encounter that in your day? Do you encounter that in your life? Isn't it a shame that we don't see that in very many places? Sometimes I go off on a bit of a tangent, guys, so feel free to just jump in and say whatever you want at any time, okay? I'm paying attention. I'm trying to listen. What belief are you talking about, Anushka? Oh, the way that we... Yes, okay. Yeah, you're talking about the conditioning. Yeah, true. Very, very true. No problem, Jesse. You do what you're doing. We together, collectively, are dealing with the after effect of unenlightened government. Whether we're talking about teachers, parents, society, councils, governments, religious leaders. We are ultimately responsible. The belief that we must care for others. No, it's not necessarily conditioned. For some people, of course, that belief is conditioned. But I can tell you it's not conditioned for me. I haven't been told that I have to care for people. I just want to. I want to, and I make the choice to do that. I'm doing that, you know? It is my conscious decision here. There is no conditioning about it. There is no prior conditioning. You are here in front of me. We are having this conversation right now directly, and in this moment right now, I am making the conscious choice that I want to care for you, support you, just connect with you in general. Now, not everybody operates in that dimension. I get that, I understand that. It is conditioning for a lot of people. But that doesn't mean that it's not there anyway. There's a funny thing about, like, religion, you know? God, truth. People kind of assume that just because religion exists and that people within religious circles have demonstrated a great deal of corruption and that there is a great deal of contradiction in religion and that there's evidence that a lot of these books, historical figures have been corrupted and tainted. Even if that is the truth, does that absolutely mean that there is no core reality behind the religion itself, as in the God principle? Just because science can't find it, and it's very difficult to conceive, and that there's lots of contradictions, etc., etc. Does that absolutely mean that it's unreal? It's just a question. Are some elements of personality genetic? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a part of your consciousness that transcends genetics. Genetics is all relevant to the body, you know? But I can influence the evolution of this body by governing your consciousness in a certain way. In a weird way, we're talking here about the free will argument and free will versus determination, destiny, free will versus destiny. If you throw a stone into a pond and it makes ripples, those ripples are destined to spread out and cover the face of the pond. But at any point you could throw another stone, which would then affect the ripples, redirect them. And if we're talking about consciousness, some of these ripples have been traveling for a very, very, very long time. But right now, if we throw another stone that's big enough, can we not influence how this situation turns out? And so we're talking about free will and destiny as one. Well, the concept of destiny is that things are predetermined. That's just the concept. But if you can change your destiny, then by the very definition, that's not destiny. Consciousness is adaptive. Any of you guys play video games? You do, don't you? Some of you do. You play video games. Right. Alright, we've created a video game. The code is in place. So any one of us can jump into that world and experience it within the limitations of that environment. Everything is predetermined. All of the code is predetermined. But if you know how to write code, you can make a mod for the game and change it, can't you? At which point the whole destiny that was set in stone within that environment has just adapted. That is consciousness. That is how consciousness operates. And so we have free will and destiny hand in hand. Material determination and yet the influence of the quantum realm and the ability, the observer effect, you know, at the same time. What is destiny to me? I guess I would have to say it's what's happening. But you have to understand when I say that, I'm connected to what's happening. I made this happen. Destiny is by design, and you are the designer. Karma. You're creating that right now in every second, giving rise to your own cosmos with your thoughts, your words, your actions, your decisions. All of this is determining what's going to happen, what experience you are going to have as it's unfolding. But right now you can generate brand new karma, brand new action. So you manufacture this. If your consciousness becomes very refined, that means very deeply present. You see this happening. You see it happening right now, right in front of you. This is going to sound strange, but it's happening so slowly and so quickly at the same time that it's very hard to detect. The happening of karma. People conceive of karma conceptually as if it's something to be understood, but it's not. It's something to be seen. You use the term destiny. A better way to consider destiny is to think of karma. You created your own destiny through action, inaction, whether that's mental action, which means thinking, verbal action, speaking, physical action, doing or non-doing. That's called karma. And it's very hard to detect because it's happening so quickly all the time, but it's also happening at a very, very subtle, or the word slow level of awareness, subtle level of awareness. So it's very hard to detect. It's not conceptual. It's happening now. Karma is not to be understood. It's to be observed. If you see what you are doing and you see what is happening, then you can govern yourself in the present moment in a way that generates good karma or a better destiny. We are, yes, we are. We're sharing this, Anushka, even right now. This one, I'll just say me. I am influencing you, right? Your very questions are influencing the words that are coming out of my mouth. So together we share this karma. We're working together in this, aren't we? Right now we're figuring this out. We're addressing this problem. We're looking into these questions together, so we simultaneously are manufacturing our karma. Because ultimately we are one, you know? We're the same one here. This is the thing that people don't get. That's why they go to war. How could you want to go to war with yourself? Why would you want to do that to yourself? You'd have to be insane. So, maybe that was a bit of a deviation, but yes, together we are simultaneously manufacturing our karma. This is our shared connection. We're in this together. Exactly, that's right. The insane ego which thinks that it's separate and has no consciousness of karma. True consciousness is like walking a tightrope. You got to stay in touch. You got to keep balanced. Don't lean too far this way or lean too far that way. Don't take your eyes off the rope or your center. If you do, you start to fall into unconsciousness. So true consciousness must be sustained. It's one of the things people don't understand about presence. And in that conversation we had the other night, I think it was last night, about potentially dipping into consciousness for an hour. They do, Jesse. Do you know why? Dipping into consciousness for an hour or so, which is wonderful, but the present moment doesn't end. So at any point it's possible to return to presence deeply, to return to full consciousness. While you are witnessing everything that's happening right now, you're there. So in terms of achieving, we encourage people to learn to slow down, become very grounded, tune in to what's happening right now and leave the conceptual understanding alone for a little while. This part of us that's trying to understand the present moment, we just put that to the side for a little while. We're just going to drop it for a bit. And we learn to tune in very deeply to what's going on right now. Some people connect deeply with the body and the breath, but really it's everything that's going on right now. That includes your thinking, obviously. But when you're watching that thinking, there's nothing to understand. And so we encourage, just let the thoughts go for a little bit, put them down, and turn your attention towards deep presence. After a while, it's realized that this is your fundamental experience at your core. Some traditions call it your original nature, your natural nature, what you already are. But they miss out, and people tend to skip out on the part of sustaining attention in presence so that it solidifies. Your true identity of presence is realized. And suddenly I see, okay, wow, I have this conceptual brain here which comes up with all of these concepts, and it tends to do that to understand the present moment and to communicate verbally and share understanding. But none of those concepts are real. Those concepts don't have their own reality unless you're stuck in them, and then that's all you experience is conceptual understanding. You'll come to understand it. You'll come to understand that understanding isn't necessary, but you will understand it eventually. And when you fully understand it, there's nothing more to be understood. There's the happening of oneness unfolding, one life unfolding. So we learn to rest as the observer, That's the key, where we tend to aim people at that. This is a model of awakening we're talking about. Concepts have no reality. Concepts are not reality. Understanding can only take place conceptually. You can't understand this cup. This cup can't understand itself. My brain conceives of a cup. So I have a picture of a cup, and I can imagine various things to do with that cup, but that is totally conceptual. It has nothing to do with the cup. So my concepts are a separate, self-contained dimension. My conceptual understanding. To prove this, I could smash the cup, and I could still go on thinking about it and talking about it. So my concepts are not connected. They are an independent dimension, if you want to call it that, and that dimension is totally illusory. It has no fundamental substance. If I step out of that conceptual, that line of thinking and that dimension of conceptual thinking, if I step out of there, the whole thing disappears. It doesn't exist by itself. And so the understanding of reality is an illusion. It can't be understood. Understanding has no reality. But, and here's the problem, as people with our current level of evolution of consciousness and the way that we govern our society, we impress upon ourselves that the intellect is very, very important, and that knowledge is very, very important, and that concepts are very, very important, and we share our concepts. We share knowledge, and we go seeking knowledge, and we write down all the information in books, etc., etc. And so what has happened to us as a collective is that this conceptual dimension has been sustained. We are keeping it alive unendingly. And so we think it's real. We've come to think that concepts, which is where the ego exists, rights and wrongs and views and opinions and beliefs, all within the concepts, we sustain that by keeping our attention on it and incessantly thinking all the time. And so we think it's real. In that is our name, labels for things, our conditioning, our history, our culture. Our identity is all conceptual. And so meditation, or a very deep presence, is a remedy. As you tune in very deeply to presence, your attention is taken out of that conceptual dimension of understanding, and your attention is turned towards the actual happening of life as it's unfolding, which is not conceptual. And if you can sustain that attention, everything that is conceptual dissolves, which means sense of separateness, ego, beliefs, opinions, knowledge, all of that dies. It all dissolves. And so the path of awakening is about stepping out of conceptual understanding and turning your attention towards the actual, real life as it's happening, which some people call God, because it communicates to you, and you are it. You are that. You are that force of life unfolding, and it's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere, which is why when you go there, you feel connected to everything, because that's what you are deep down. Definitely not against knowledge and logical ideas, in fact. And this may sound strange, but from my point of view, everything I'm saying is completely logical because I can see it. So it's totally logical to me. But anyway, getting back to your question, I'm not against it at all. You have to understand that it's tremendously limited knowledge and logic. It's extremely limited because it's only taking place inside the human brain. You know, logic and knowledge has created technology, sciences of all sorts. That's the evolution of our physical experience here. There's nothing wrong with it in and of itself, but you have to know that knowledge cannot grasp reality. Reality is not knowledge. Knowledge only occurs as a thought process inside the brain. Outside of your head, there is no knowledge. There is no logic outside of your head. Trees are not logical. The weather is not logical. The sun, the moon, galaxies, universes, it's not logical. And that is also you. All of that stuff out there happening is also you and your consciousness. But people get stuck in the logic and the thinking. And so naturally after a long time of being stuck in your head, you start to feel very disconnected and lost and confused. And so you just learn to turn your attention away from the brain, away from the thoughts and the logic and the knowledge. And then you turn your attention back towards what's actually occurring, which contains all of life. All of life is happening there, and that's you. That's your real identity, which has no self. It has no lasting, permanent self-entity inside it. All apparent beings disappear, all of them. So they have no permanent reality, which means they're illusions. And so you can let them go. They come and they go, but you don't. You, as the awareness of life itself, are unmoving and unreachable by matter, and so-called individuals and entities. Can you explain it, Jesse? A better way to ask that question is what can you see? What's coming into focus? So the achieving of that state of consciousness is realized when pure presence is connected with, but it's extremely deep. It goes tremendously deep because your mind is not physical. So when you go very deep into that non-physical mind, well, there's non-physical experience. And that's the sort of stuff that you have to experience it to be able to communicate about it. That's right, Jesse. It's fundamentally unreal, and so is all of the identity contained within it. It's just conditioning. It's programming. There is no I. You've heard that before, right? So we have to be very clear on the term mind. Mind is not intellect. Some people call it consciousness, and some people refer to mind as the thinking process, and then they refer to consciousness as life, right? Life is not the intellect, you know? But when I use the term mind, I'm talking about consciousness. So you just got to make sure you've got those definitions clear. So you have brain, which is psychology and thought process, and identity, a sense of identity, which is the result of conditioning. Because of our current level of consciousness, the evolution of our consciousness on this planet, we still invest in this self-identity as an individual, and our social structures support that and recondition it and strengthen that conditioning. And so we grow up with that. But that's just because our consciousness is still unevolved. As our consciousness evolves, we drop that, we let go of this illusion of individualness, and right along goes all of the memory and all of the egoic views and beliefs and everything else. And so the intellect is responsible for all of that conditioning because it sustains itself. It's constantly sustaining itself if you keep feeding it. So you stop feeding it. Exactly. Jesse, exactly. Healing happens in that space, which is why, and I know a few people in the chat yesterday had a bit of a problem with this when I said, if you want the real awakening, there's only one direction to turn. People struggle with that because conceptually there are lots of directions. There's lots of traditions, there's lots of paths, there's lots of views. Of course there is. But outside of that intellectual interpretation, there is only one life unfolding, and that's what you have to turn towards if you want awakening / healing. So presence, of course, it all comes down to presence. You have to ask yourself this on a daily basis. How much of my time in the day is spent being totally, powerfully present with this energy of life as it's happening? Totally immersed in the awareness of right now, without conceptualizing the present moment, without conceptualizing it. Actually being in it. And we talk about discipline when, if somebody says, how do I do that? I'd like to do that. We talk about discipline, mindfulness, cultivating mindfulness. That's exactly right, Jesse. The magic doesn't happen in the intellect. All of the energy of life is where the magic is. It's literally the definition of magic. How is this moment materializing right now? And your connection to this present moment and your ability to influence the matter of this moment as it's materializing, if you don't think that's magical, I'm afraid you've lost touch with reality. Which is why also, when two people fall in love, it's not an intellectual process that's happening there. That's a direct communion. Life coming into contact with life, really, and that's what we experience as love, because that's what we are. So discipline means on a daily basis, or as often as you like, you consciously forge this deep present awareness through things like yoga or any kind of physical discipline, so something that involves physicality. And for a long time, you want to put down the psychology, so you don't want to be thinking a lot while you're doing it. Writing isn't going to be helpful. Talking isn't going to be helpful. Listening to somebody talking isn't going to be helpful with regards to discipline. Because you need to be cultivating awareness, direct awareness, which is not intellectual, it's experiential. So we talk about discipline because that means book it in. You get yourself booked in for some discipline. Cultivate it consciously instead of waiting to wake up. Go and wake up. Step into the now very deeply. Stay there. How long can you stay there for? It's intense. It gets intense. The energy of the present moment, well, it's not... It goes beyond nuclear, put it that way. Spiritually speaking, it goes beyond nuclear, so you learn to tap into the energy of the present moment. Meditation is a discipline, yeah. Yeah, meditation is direct watching of the present moment. So how long do we sustain that for if we want to be in contact with what's happening, really? Do we sustain contact with what's happening? Awakening, Sirius, yeah. So this means awakening from the dream of apparent individuality, apparent separateness, from the perspective of the brain and the self in the brain. I perceive myself to be separate from all of life, and so I live separately. In Christianity, that term is given to the fallen angel, Lucifer. He was cast out of the kingdom of heaven. That's the ego, by the way. But of course, it's just a language. It's to perceive yourself to be separate from God, separate from all of life. That's right, Anushka. Just for a while. After a while, you realize, okay, the intellect is also a part of you. The intellect can be very useful for figuring out problems and doing stuff, you know? Use the intellect to build things, make things, organize things. It has a place. Welcome back, Michaela. It has a place. But it's not going to understand reality because it's impossible for this tiny little brain here to grasp it. See you later, Sirius. Thanks for checking in. Maybe see you again at some point. Have a good one. So we put the intellect down and learn to abide deeply in the present moment. That's the key, that's the core of it. But yeah, you have to learn to sustain the cultivation. And obviously the more you cultivate, the more rewards you reap, or the more powerful your mind becomes, and the more connected you, or the more you live in that connection. You can't grasp reality. Reality is unfolding as we speak, so you can't grasp that. You are that. The intellect could try to grasp it, but it won't be able to. This is why science is limited, telescopes, machines, Large Hadron Colliders, they're all trying to grasp reality. Some miniature machine somewhere is trying to grasp the entire picture of life unfolding. It will never be able to do it. There isn't a camera big enough to take that picture, to take that photograph. The only thing that can grasp reality is reality unfolding, which is always happening right now. So obviously, because it's happening as we speak and it's unfolding as we speak, it's never grasped. It's always changing and shifting and turning and twisting. Like a flame, a candle flame, never still, never, always burning, always unfolding, always changing. Now you can be on the same page as that, which is another, maybe a better way of looking at it, as opposed to grasping it. You, as a person, can be on the same page as reality, unfolding as we speak. But you have to know where to look. Observing, exactly. Observing, maintaining, observing. And of course you're always observing, always. But what are you observing? Are you observing the intellect with its illusions and fantasies and creations? Because, okay, that's fine if you're going to do that, but don't mistake the intellect for reality. Because obviously that would cause you a lot of problems. You'll start thinking things are real when they're not. Things start to become very calm and very quiet, when you're connecting with it. Internally, lots of these processes and thoughts and perceptions and beliefs, they slowly diminish, they settle. My teacher had a really good analogy, okay, and I'm going to leave on this because I've been here for like 2.5 hours. This has been a really great chat, by the way. Thank you to everyone checking in. But we'll leave on this. He had a really great analogy. That's a way of kind of explaining what it's like. If if you're inside a room with lots of confetti, like millions and millions and millions of pieces of confetti, and you're inside the room and you've got all your friends inside the room and you're all here hanging out, having a chat, moving around, bouncing around, sharing things, and the confetti's all over the place, you know, it's everywhere. You can't touch the wall without hitting a piece of confetti. It's every inch is covered. So that's what it's like inside your head. You've got all these thoughts and people and friends and memories and traumas and histories and ideas and beliefs and views and whatever, all inside your brain. That's fine. That's okay. But you can't, because there's so much going on in there, you've lost sight of the room. It's just confetti everywhere. That's all you can see. You don't even know what's up and what's down anymore because you've been so consumed by this confetti. You know, you've stayed in your brain for years and years and years with all of these thoughts and ideas and people, memories, etc., all jumping around. So what do? Well, you don't run around inside the room trying to grasp the confetti, because doing that just mixes up more confetti and you're falling over Bob and you elbowed Marie in the face and now the people are fat. Anyway, it's just a shit fight inside there. So what do? Stand still. Stop moving. Don't move. Become totally still. Stay still. Don't move. Now that can be difficult because you've been so used to moving. You've got a lot of shit going on in there that you really like. You're really addicted to it, you know? You've got all your friends in there with you and you've got all your favourite pieces of confetti that you've been playing with for 25 years. Alright, okay, it's going to take you a little bit of time to learn how to stand still. That's fine. Just do your best. Stand still. Stay still. Don't move. Stay still long enough and all of that confetti will stop with you. It was only moving around so much and covering all of the walls because you were in there sustaining that movement, running around like a crazy person. It doesn't move by itself. There's nobody else in there. It's just you in there. You're alone in there. And that's what it's like, meditation. This true experience of oneness, one life, alone here. Sharing this experience together, consciousness, shared consciousness unfolding in unity. It's literally happening as we speak. Now, if we know that, we're in love together. We are in this space of love. I don't want anything from you. I don't want to hurt you. Let's share this experience together and make it wonderful. Now, you're standing in this room. You just have to learn how to stand still. And when eventually that confetti is settled and that last piece of confetti touches the floor and stops, your mind totally opens up, seeing the entire room all at once, full awareness of presence. Now the ego operates in all of the confetti, these ideas of self and belief and culture and history and right and wrong, religion. It's all in the ego, it's all in the confetti. So getting that final piece of confetti to be still, which just means don't go chasing it, don't do anything about it. If you do that, you're going to kick up more confetti. Just stay still. Don't move. That's what powerful presence and observation of presence does. It will totally still your mind. Because your mind you have to become totally still to be there. But most people jump in for half an hour or 5 minutes, or they take some ayahuasca, or they take some mushrooms, and it kind of forces them into that space. Meanwhile, there's confetti going all over the place still, and it's a very unstable connection. It's so unstable that it only lasts for a little while. But it's supposed to be a hint. It's supposed to be a reminder. Do you know there's a very deep reality to your consciousness? Okay, if you've forgotten that and you take mushrooms, you'll reconnect with it for a little while. But that's not it. That's just a little taster. You just had a little taste. Don't you want the full connection? Don't you want to fully embody that connection? It won't be like what it was like when you had mushrooms, because that was a kind of corrupted dose, an artificial dose, but it kind of brings you in contact. It's not natural though, so it's not the same, so you can't think, so it's going to be like I'm on mushrooms all the time or acid. It's not like that. It's similar. It's got a similar resonance. But you can still function, but you don't leave. You're immersed in that space all day, every day, because that's what you are. But at any point you can jump back into the intellect, have a conversation, come up with a plan, a project. I don't know, what do you want to do? Want to do stuff together? Want to build something cool? Want to make something happen? Want to plan something and see it to fruition? That's what the intellect is for. We can organize things with it. It builds computers. It comes up with schedules and times. I'm going to be on same time tomorrow. You know, it's for organizing. But it's not going to help you decipher what's reality because it can't grasp what that is. So you have to look in a different direction. So anyway, finishing up. Standing still in the room of confetti. As those last pieces drop, there's a process to maintaining stillness. Any enlightened monk, mystic, or master that you can read up on, anyone who is very deeply revered, will talk about a final kind of encounter. Jesus talked about his contact with the devil in the desert. The Buddha talked about his face-to-face encounter with Mara, which is essentially the Buddhist devil. This means the ego and its grasp on you, because you think you're it, you know. The ego, because it's been so self-sustained and it's full of anxieties and fears and worries, and you've been dealing with it for so long, it makes you think you're it. I believe myself to be this individual self here with a body. That's me. How dare you attack me or offend me? That's what causes people to go to war, that fear. So anyway, we're talking about these final pieces of confetti in the room. That's where things get really difficult. That is why monks exist. Because a monk has dedicated their life to stilling all of that confetti. Even the last pieces, which is the most difficult part. Now we're talking about the fear of death. Actually facing the fear of death, which obviously is an illusion because you don't really die. Anyway, I know that was a big explanation, but I don't actually remember why we got onto that. But it was just a little way of explaining, maybe getting an idea of what it takes to really delve into presence deeply. Well, I'm glad you found it interesting, Anushka. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and to Jesse, and to everyone else who's been here. Michaela was here. Who else was here before? Sirius was here. There's been lots of people here tonight. It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you guys did too. And yeah, feel free to jump back in whenever you want to. I'm not here to like... It's funny because this conversation started out with preaching. No, you're totally welcome, Anushka, anytime. Any questions you want to go over. We started out this Sirius jumped in and was asking about preaching, and I know it can come across that way at times. We don't preach though, we're just here to have a conversation and to explore. And so, you know, I'm not here to convince anyone or tell anyone what they should or shouldn't be doing. But it's very nice to share these experiences together and to have fun with it, you know. There's lots of stuff we can do, and it's nice to share this connection. Alright guys, I'm out of here. Have fun. See you in the next one, alright? And I'll check in on you guys if you're doing stuff. Alright, have fun with the horses, Jesse.